My brain, and baby, you know it's obvious. I'm a sucker for you. Say the word and I'll go anywhere blindly. Da 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 da. Hi guys, it's Teresa. Welcome back to my channel. So about 6 months ago, I think I did a video where I talked about things that I don't like seeing in books, and in that video I promised that I would do the counterpart to that of things that I love seeing in books. And it's obviously taken me quite a long time to come around to doing this. I'm very sorry about that, but here we are. If you've missed that first video, I will link it in the description box below and in the cards. But today we're just talking about some things that I just in general love seeing in books. Like anytime I encounter that thing, it makes me more excited to read, it makes me more motivated to read, and I tend to gravitate towards books that in some shape or form include these things. I hesitated to call this like tropes because not all of these are tropes. They're just kind of very specific constellations of elements in a book that make me excited to be reading that particular book, if that makes sense. Before we get started, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you're enjoying my content. And now let's jump right into some things that I really love seeing in books. The first thing would probably be the equivalent to a four-leaved clover in the book world, and that is platonic friendships between men and women. So something I'm gonna try to do with all of these points is give you a little bit of a recommendation of like one book or two that does this in some way, shape, or form, but honestly, this is super hard. I was literally looking through my like read list on Goodreads trying to find something, anything that included a platonic friendship, and it's literally like searching for a needle in a haystack. It's almost impossible. I don't know why, but I think authors tend to believe that like books sell better when they have a romance in it, and let's be honest, that's largely true. So I'm not faulting them for it, but honestly, having a platonic friendship can be so meaningful. And like, I think it's important, especially in young adult books, to send the message that it's not always a situation of like, oh, you must be in love with someone, otherwise it's like weird for you to be hanging out. Like one book that I have found while looking through that list that does this to some extent is The Golem and the Genie by Helene Wecker. This book follows a golem and a genie, and they form this friendship basically based on the fact that they're both mythical creatures in a world of humans. They're basically set apart by that and sort of start helping each other cope with that situation. And I personally just in general love this book. You should read it if you haven't already. And they don't have a romance yet. There is eventually, hopefully at some point in our lives, going to be a sequel. It keeps being pushed back, so I don't know if I'm even supposed to hold out hope here, but I do believe that the sequels might eventually introduce a romance between these two characters. But in the first book, their relationship is completely platonic. It really just shows that you can be kind to somebody and you can have a connection to somebody and you can have a relationship with somebody of the opposite sex without there being a sexual component involved, and it's still being a, you know, fully functioning, complete and whole relationship that's not constantly just about like, will they, won't they, eventually, even though, as I said, I do believe eventually it might go down that path, but I don't know, because again, no sequels as of yet. Saying this out loud sounds really self-explanatory, like of course this is still a whole relationship, this is still a fully functioning relationship. But as I said, I think these types of relationships are just not represented enough in books in general, and in YA in particular, and I just want more of it. So if you know more books that are about platonic friendships between men and women, share them down below, please. The next point is also pretty much non-existent, especially in YA, but just in general, it's very rare. And that's kind of the case for, well, not all of these, some of these. That's why I appreciate them so much, is because they're rare. And that is a healthy family dynamic with present parents and good relationships between the parents and the children, where they treat each other like equals with respect, they communicate well, and they function well as a family unit. Why is this so hard to find? I don't know. I mean, obviously, I love reading about like conflict of any kind. That's kind of what makes books exciting, right? Is if there's like some sort of a disagreement between people. But when like the main motivation of a main character is just that they had a broken home and that they don't have a good relationship with their parents, so they have like mommy or daddy issues, like all of those are valid points to build a character from, but can we just get something else, please, for once? I think this is also very rare to find, and again, I was struggling with trying to find a book that I could possibly recommend to you for this, and honestly, the one that I did find, I feel like is kind of cheating because it's the Farseer Trilogy by Robin Hobb. Now, if you don't know what this is about, basically the main character is the bastard son of, I think, a royal prince in line for the throne, and he has to abdicate when it comes out that he does have a bastard son, and they don't have a good relationship to begin with, but just over the course of the books, I did feel like all the different members of the royal family, in whatever capacity they are a part of it, mostly, not all, mostly worked really well together. They were very supportive of one another, and I just really, really love this type of love portrayed in a book in whatever shape it may take. And while it is a little bit unconventional in this book, and I wouldn't say that this is like a healthy family by any means, especially because he's being trained as their assassin because he's a bastard. So, you know, there's some questions to be raised there. I'm just saying that there are some elements that for me represent a healthy family dynamic. And so, yeah, as I said, this is the closest I could come to it. Again, if you have recommendations for this, let me know, because I don't know, even if you know books I have read that include this, let me know, because I was really struggling trying to find any. Then we come to something that's a little bit more generic and just a more popular opinion, I guess, and that is hate to love relationships. I think almost everyone I know really, really enjoys this trope. There's just something about it that makes it so attractive. I think it is because when they start off hating each other, there's obviously so much tension involved. And it's always said that hate and love aren't actually opposites, but they're just like two sides of the same coin because they both involve very passionate feelings and it's very emotion heavy. But I think that that's what makes it so enticing, is because the line is very slim between hate and love, especially because both kind of come from the same place of feeling very strongly about someone. And especially if you start out with hate and then they're like physically attracted to each other and then they're conflicted, and then the person they hate like does something redeeming and they're like, oh my god, I'm even more confused now. I'm supposed to hate them, but I'm feeling feelings, and it's just so exciting. And I'm just 100% obsessed with this trope. Any book that has this will automatically like get a bump in my like estimation of it, because it's just, oh, it's so good. Especially if it's done right. And I've said before, it's not easy to do this right, because usually, you know, it's written from the female's perspective and there's this male character that she's not really sure about, that she hates at first and then falls in love with. And you have to, in that case, create a very complex male character that kind of does shady things to warrant this hatred, but also they have to somehow be able to be explained or, justified, or they have to have a complete change of heart just in order to also make the love possible. Because if you're trying to sell a story of people, of characters that the reader is supposed to root for, they have to have redeeming qualities. And if you have a heroine that falls in love with a complete asshole, you just kind of stop rooting for her. And I'm not going to mention The Cruel Prince again, because I feel like this book is just applicable to everything I have to say these days, but I already did just mention it. So that's one of the cases where I feel like it's not done well, because the character of Cardan doesn't have redeeming qualities. And so it's hard to be like, I get why she now loves him, because it doesn't make sense. On the other hand, the book I've mentioned previously, I think does this very well, is Stolen Songbird by Danielle L. Jensen. In this specific case, the male character has kind of reasons for his actions, and his actions don't 100% reflect how he actually feels. And in that sense, it's very well resolved, this like shift of hate to love. Personally, it's one of my favorites and I really, really recommend it. And as always, leave other recommendations of this down below because I'm always looking for more. The next thing that I really, really like is a variant on the chosen one trope where the main character isn't directly a chosen one in terms of like prophecy or anything like that, but where he's just or she is just a natural in one thing for no apparent reason and automatically better than everybody else that like worked much harder and much longer for the same thing. For example, in The Name of the Wind, we have Quoth, who is literally a natural talent at magic, and I love the scenes at university where he would literally school his teachers and like basically, you know, set them straight, and I love that. I absolutely love that because it's such like wish fulfillment, because you can just project yourself so well into that character and you can imagine yourself being like all sassy and cool and so good at something that everybody's just baffled at it. And I know it's kind of unrealistic and a lot of people get annoyed at this trope, I guess, for that very reason. I just love it. I just love it, especially in fantasy settings where it's about magic or something like that, because there you can suspend your disbelief a little bit more, you know, as if it were a real life situation where you know that you can't reach a certain level of something without putting at least like some effort into it. Whereas magic is, in my opinion, an area where I can totally believe that somebody's just automatically better than everybody else because it's already not realistic. Second to last, I really enjoy books with complex villains, but this was another point where I was struggling to find any book that actually includes complex villains because they're very difficult to write and pull off, and they just don't happen all that frequently, unfortunately. I personally am a huge fan of gray areas and nuance and books that play both sides and they don't spell out for you, oh, this person is good, so root for them, and this person is bad, so don't root for them. I think it's so much more interesting, and just the reading experience itself, it's so much more interesting when you read about characters that where you're just not sure in what category to put them. Like, at first you might think they're kind of horrible people based on their actions, and then you find out their motivations or their background, and all of a sudden there's like this new perspective on it, and they have redeeming qualities, but they're still sometimes horrible people, and it just rounds it off like so nicely, and it's just really difficult to put that person in a specific box, and I think that's always great. One book that comes to mind here is Professor Moriarty, Hound of the D'Urbervilles. This is a short story collection-ish by Kim Newman, basically modeled after the style of the Sherlock Holmes short story books, or novellas, I think they're called novellas, where each book is sort of self-contained and follows a specific case. But instead of following Sherlock Holmes and Watson, we follow Professor Moriarty and his sidekick, and it's great. It's all like fictionalized. Not Sherlock is also fictionalized, but it's sort of a form of like fan fiction based on the character of Moriarty, who is sort of just like a side figure in the original series, but here he's the main character and you get to know him so well, and he's obviously a villain, but you relate to him and he's hilarious and he has just so much nuance and there's so much complexity to his way of thinking and what he does, and it's not just like, oh, I want to do evil. And finally, I just wanted to mention two little things that I just love seeing in books in general. Like, it's more like topics, not topics. Yeah, I'm just gonna say it. I really like books about mermaids and about genie. Genie. I never can pronounce that word, I'm sorry. Mermaids is difficult because I'm obsessed. I was always obsessed with Ariel and the Little Mermaid and the original fairy tale also, and just, I love mermaids. I wanted to be a mermaid until I was 20 years old, and I would pretend to like swim like a mermaid in our pool, and yeah, now the usual, obsessed with H2O, whatever, you get the gist. However, it's really hard to find good mermaid books because most of them are really lazy and just dumb. And I've yet to find a good mermaid retelling. One I do have my eye on is Mermaid, what's it called? A Mermaid retelling by Christina Henry. I'll put it on the screen. I really liked her Alice's Adventures in Wonderland retelling, so I have high hopes for this one. And the only one I've read that I found on my Goodreads that I rated high was Fathomless by Jackson Pierce. But again, this was like years ago, and I probably wouldn't rate it this highly. I gave it 4 stars at the time now, so I'm not really recommending it because I can't at this point. I just wish there were more like high quality Little Mermaid retellings or like mermaid stories in general out there, because it's literally, I would literally buy and read them all. No joke. And for Jinn, I think these have been more coming in recent years. Like, as I said, The Golem and the Genie is a really good book. I also really liked City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. Both of these I highly, highly recommend. I can't wait to get my hands on The Kingdom of Copper. It just came out, I think. I'm excited. I just like the huge amount of mythology that surrounds Jinn, and it's so informational, especially when the author like puts research into it and sort of explains the historical, cultural backgrounds of this myth a little bit better. And I don't know, I'm just obsessed with it. So, but yeah, that is it for some of the things I love seeing in books. I wish more books had all of these things. If you know a book that includes all of this, let me know. Like, just do, please. I don't know how Mermaids and Jinn would fit into one book, but one of those two would be fine. Just like everything else. Oh my god. That would be, if I were to write a book, that would be the book I would write. Please let me know in the comments down below what other things you really, really love reading in books. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. I upload every Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday, and I will see you very soon with another video. Until then, have a lovely week. Bye!